on behalf of the BCAS, I would like to welcome all of you to the first of this series of podcasts which we are holding. And our guest for today is CA Dinesh Kanabar, who will be talking on the topic second innings. So welcome, Mr. Kanabar.
Thank you, Zubin. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. BCA is a great platform to which I owe a lot of my career. And thank you for having me here. Honored to be here.
Anyway, before we go on to the second innings, just so that the viewers have a background, a little bit of your first innings, you've built an extraordinary career across various firms, RSM, PwC, KPMG India, where you rose to be the deputy CEO and the chairman of the tax practice. So can you take us through the key milestones that have shaped this remarkable first innings of yours?
Sure. But before I do that, just one odd remark. You speak about second innings. And while I will reflect on what you would regard as the first innings, I don't think I have had a change of innings at all. It is simply that I am playing the very same innings, but I was not enjoying the shots that I was playing. I was not enjoying the pitch on which I was playing. And so I chose a different pitch, a different type of a format of a game, and that's about it. But going back to your question, and I think it's a very important question, when I reflect on my journey, I started my career with Ratan S. Mama and Company. And Ratan Mama was an extraordinary entrepreneur. He was possibly the first chartered accountant who set up a practice in 1949. He borrowed a small sum of 10,000 rupees from one of his clients, sort of purchased a table, chair, and built up a practice. And that had offices, several offices in India, was the first chartered accountant to set up offices in UAE, Oman, etc., and built quite a bit of a career. I started my career with Ratan Mama and Company in 1984, 83 actually, and spent quite a few years until I went on to become the managing partner of the firm after the unfortunate demise of Mr. Mama in 1997. And then a few friends came back to say that we are all growing different organizations. Can we come together and really create an Indian organization which truly delivers world-class services? And so Ashok Wadhwa, who was then the managing partner at Anderson, Ketan Dalal, Gautam Doshi, and their teams, we all came back together and we used Ratan S. Mama as a platform. We re-christened it as an RSM. Ashok becoming the managing partner, me becoming the deputy managing partner. But Ashok focusing a lot more in growing the corporate finance practice in what is now Ambit Corporate Finance, and me focusing more on the accounting practice. And that phase of my life was more about thinking organizations, thinking scale, thinking of building institutions, and thinking of client connect. It taught me how to think big, how to think institutional, how to relate to clients, and how to value clients and do client service. And then as I moved from RSM and we grew that organization well, and we felt that we had grown so much that we needed to be under an umbrella of a big four. And we moved into PwC. PwC was all about scale, global institutions, cross-border taxation, institution building, and I was the head of the tax practice there. I remember this goes all the way back to 2007 when PwC had almost 47 tax partners and I was leading the tax practice. And then when I moved to KPMG and I went on to become the deputy CEO, it was more about institution building. It was more about governance. It was more about leadership. And it was more about thinking beyond yourself into thinking about large organizations. And then I decided to move out of there, and we'll talk about it as we go along, to set up RSM, to set up Dhruva.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm sure you would have faced a lot of challenges, but what was probably one of the most or the two most complex challenges that you navigated over these years? And how did it shape your understanding for what matters truly for professional services?
As you evolve in your professional career, you start thinking about a number of things and look at life in retrospect. And the first thing which comes to my mind is that when you start your career, you start thinking about competence. And you think that competence is the most valuable thing that you can have in your career. And indeed it is. And then as you grow, you start realizing that life is not about only competence, it is about judgment. It is about understanding what is right and what is wrong, not from a textbook perspective, not merely only from a morality perspective, but from an overall perspective. Second, you start thinking in your earlier stages of the career to prove yourself. And then as you start growing, you start thinking about institution building, you start thinking about actually becoming irrelevant. You start thinking about mentorship. You start thinking about how do you create people who are like you, entrepreneurs, and who can take the journey forward. So the two are very, very different things. Your earlier part of your career is all about proving yourself, scale. So when I look back and I look at my life with PwC and with KPMG, it was all about scale. And then you suddenly start realizing that is scale what is important, or is it relevance which is more important? When I look back at KPMG, a great organization doing great work, the focus was a little bit inward, risk mitigation as every large organization ought to do. So good skills, good sets, but really it mattered about how do you look about organization risk aversion. And then you start realizing that organizations are all about alignment. How do you align the interest of the organization, the interest of the client, the aspirations of the people who want to grow? And the thought process which I had was that can I build an organization which I can dream of retiring in and build in from start to say, yes, this is the journey I want to have. And therefore, when I reflect on that entire thing, the movement from KPMG to Dhruva was not about ambition. It was about creating a relevant organization, an organization which is sustainable, an organization which is what I dreamt professional should be all about.
Interesting. So I think, in short, you need to look at the bigger picture in a more comprehensive manner. So that definitely answers to a certain extent the question that what made you take the bold decision to set up Dhruva Advisors. You have, I think, to a certain extent answered this.
If I can
So was it
supplement
something
that,
which was planned, or is it something that evolved really?
two parts to that, Zubin. First is people always go on talking to say that you have a cushy job, you are the deputy CEO of KPMG. Why did you take a risk of setting up an organization which nobody knew at that point of time, certainly not me, as to how this would shape up? In retrospect, it all looks good and rosy, but it isn't always that way. You start, you've got jitters in your stomach, you don't know really how will an organization shape up. I honestly, I can tell you that when I started out, I wasn't even too sure whether I would just practice as a counsel or I would create an organization. But comfort is one thing which is an anesthesia to courage. At that state of start, you're not worried about money. You are worried about to say, so unlike what people would perceive, that did I perceive risk in giving up a cushy job and start to create Dhruva? It was more about, as I said, relevance. It was more about saying, what am I in this profession for? And is this what am I doing just now? And if I am not, what is it that I need to do what I want to be? I want myself to be in the profession for. So it is about purely being relevant. And if I may say so, Zubin, Dhruva was not built out of ambition. It was built out of purely alignment and relevance. To say, can I create an organization where people are aligned on a thought process and are relevant?
Relevance is definitely important because it should not only necessarily what you want to do, but whether your stakeholders, the clients really, whether it is relevant for them. That is an
And for
interesting
that
point.
purpose, I think the entire focus of Dhruva Zubin has been culture. If somebody asks me a question that what is my biggest role as a CEO, it is really to bring an alignment of the culture. When people look at Dhruva, and I have seen so many people come and say, oh, Dinesh, in 11 years, we've got 7 offices in India, 2 in UAE, 1 in Saudi Arabia, 1 in Singapore. That's amazing. And I think they are missing the whole point because Dhruva is not about scale. It is about creating an organization where people are aligned to a common culture. My own personal biggest role really is to build the culture of the organization so that people are aligned to the values that we have set out. Growth may be slow, growth may be fast. That's a matter of perception. If you look at the big four, they are very large organizations, they are global organizations. They have built a brand over decades, more than a century, and for all the right reasons. An organization like Dhruva is not aspiring to compete with anybody in terms of size. If you're not competing with people in terms of size, then what are you competing with? And we thought out some ideas for ourselves. We came back to say how our culture would be very, very different from that of a big four. And it is no reflection to comment that one is good or one is bad. It's really a question to say that if you are creating an Indian organization which is going to make a mark for itself, create a culture for its people, what should that culture be and how should we move forward?
Okay. So essentially, the goals and matrices may not necessarily all be in quantitative terms. Are they also relevant, or how have these matrices and changed where you would look at success
It's
after the big four?
it's a very interesting question, Zubin. Um, we sat down and we came back to say that if you look at the big four, and I said they are wonderful organizations built through generations doing some fantastic work in India and globally. But at the time, all of them are competing with each other in terms of size. They want to grow, they want to grow their top line exponentially. Each one is looking, one has grown 14%, other wants to grow 24%. That's what it is all about. In that process, if I may dare say, two, three things have happened. Big Four have partners, and the word partners probably has become a career move as opposed to creating a genuine partnership.
Yes, interesting.
And as we set up Dhruva, the first question I asked was that are we partners of each other? And what does it mean to be a partner? When you meet a partner, you have joy because that partner is supporting you in what you are doing. That partner's views and thoughts are aligned. You are not competing with each other. You are being with each other, trying to help each other succeed. And the first decision which we took in Dhruva, right in the first 4 months of setting up, was to say that we will not have revenue based targets for partners. Because the moment you start doing that, partners are competing with each other to achieve their targets. The philosophy was that it cannot be that a partner succeeds and an organization does not, that one partner succeeds and another partner does not. Really is how do you create an aligned culture where people are working, supporting each other, so each person is able to achieve their goals. Now, it may look like egalitarian, but let me assure you it is not. I do remember in the first 2, 3 years when I would talk about this, people would come back and say, "Oh, Dinesh, but you are just 6, 7 partners, so maybe you can do that. How do you do partner evaluation if people don't have revenue targets? Once you grow to 20, this will not work." Today, we are 46 senior people within the organization, and the same culture continues. Can you divorce yourself from revenue? You can't. You are a business organization, you want to grow. But the question is the revenue an organizational aspiration or an individual aspiration? I would expect that if a partner wins a work but believes that he is not or she is not the right person qualified, would bring in another person without really worrying as to where do revenues sit. That was one fundamental change that we made. And the other fundamental change that we made was that in the earlier organizations, I saw that every 2 years, people were given promotions, etc. It was very hierarchical. And we said, can we try and subsume some of that hierarchy? And we have done that. Instead of people aspiring every 2 years for promotion because people felt that was motivation, and we felt no, people get promoted when their roles change. So we redo the organizational matrix such that people grow when their roles, when their capabilities change. So those were some of the very fundamental things. And finally, because we were able to say that we are not a revenue target oriented organization, we took one more fundamental decision, which I don't think people even now are able to come to grips with, and people believe that it is just a talk. But we come back and say, we are not going to chase work. We are going to do good quality work. If you are doing good quality work, you will be recognized and the clients will come. And thus far, in the last 11 years, history has proved that so long as you are doing good work, you should not go on chasing RFPs, you should not go on sort of meeting clients. Zubin, there is a small book I have kept out there on the stand,
Yes.
and which is Culture of Dhruva by IIM Ahmedabad. We are immensely proud. This is actually an updated study.
Yes.
They did a first study on us when we were 5 years old. The second one is now when we are 11 years old. But they are talking about the culture, the philosophy which I am talking to you about. They went and met partners extensively. And we came back to say, yes, this is the philosophy that the firm will imbibe, and I'm glad it has worked out.
See, two things. One is let your work do the talking. And basically, you are still a professional and not a businessman. I think these are two very important things, I think, which maybe are to a certain extent different from Big Four. Now, moving on to a slightly different part of your career, you serve as an independent director on the boards of several companies. You are also have been a member of the Rangachari Committee, constituted for recommending reforms in the taxation, member of FICCI's National Committee, and a mentor of its technical committee. How do these roles fit into your whatever innings you may consider, whether it is your continuing innings, first innings, or second innings? How do these roles fit in? And at what stage of your career did you really think of that switch?
So actually, Zubin, while I'm on the board of a few companies, it is not something which I do regularly. It is not something which I pursue. In fact, I shun away from directorships. There are a few close relationships which I have had, people who have been supporting me right through my career. And when they make a request, you sometimes find it difficult to turn it down. I view my role, whether it is as a director, whether it is as a committee member, as a role of imparting some wisdom which you have got over a period of time, uh, providing some strategy, some thought process, some direction, providing some mentorship. And Zubin, I believe that any experience that a person has got is only relevant if you can impart that to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So this is my way of trying to say, can I impart that to organizations? And also, Zubin, the organizations on which I am on the board of are some of the most sunrise sectors, fastest growing organizations. When I sit on those board meetings, I see the scale at which they work, the speed of execution, their breadth of management, their thought process. And that inspires me to do something likewise in my own organization. It works both ways. When you speak about FICCI, about some of the other government committee members, there are two parts, Zubin. One is that I think we tax professionals sometimes come with a belief that tax is an end in itself, and it is not. It's a subset of a larger business environment. And your ability to relate to that environment is very, very critical. I sit on the managing committee of FICCI, and we sit and talk about variety of things. What's happening on ESR front? What's happening on climate? Where is AI going? Is India developing properly? What are the new things that need to do? Being part of that managing committee and sitting on some of those. So I'm sitting on the FICCI manufacturing committee. And as you know, our Prime Minister has come back to say that we want to manufacture in India, and we make presentations to them, etc., on what India needs to do in terms of manufacture. Your vision gets broadened. And the only way a leader can lead an organization, if the leader's vision is far beyond the organization. All of these contribute to me to being a complete leader.
So in a way, it is also a form of a professional social responsibility to some extent.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes. Now, see, now another topic which has been engaging and which is a hot topic is work-life balance. So how are you able to maintain this considering the various roles which you are playing, the advisory roles, entrepreneurship, mentorship and all that? So has your approach to that changed?
So that's actually quite an important question, Zubin. And the way I see the youth of today is far more conscious of work-life balance than probably what I was when I started my career way back in 1980. And I think work-life balance and work-life balancing is both very, very, very relevant. I would put two things. First, in an overall environment and organizational context, and in my own context. In my own context, earlier it was a question about hours, and now it's a question about energy. Where do I spend my energy? And I go back and say that I need to measure how I use my energy, where do I use my energy. So it becomes very much important for me to be able to say that I will be there only where it is relevant. I will say no, and saying no becomes a very, very important trait. You hear about people burning out, and I think that burnout, some of the people wear it as a badge of honor, and I think it's a big mistake. It's a fault of design. It's not a fault of individual, it's a fault of design. In fact, in Dhruva, there is a fair amount of recognition that your physical wellness and mental wellness are the most important essential things. So many of us who are physically very adept have a WhatsApp group, and we will post about what we did, including me doing so this morning, to say this is what I worked out. We inspire each other. So as you grow in life, you start recognizing that health is a necessity, both physical health and mental health. Your ability to meditate, your ability to sort of cool down, calm, be reflective, that's what permeates through the length and breadth of the organization. So the way I would view it is that work-life balance should not be an adage. It is not just a slogan. It is something which people have to practice, people have to prioritize, and the ability of an organization to say, please prioritize this is more important than anything else, is critical for the success of an organization.
I think it is important that you learn to say no.
Yep.
And it should not be seen as a fashion or as a way to pat your back that I have put in 18 hours or 16 hours and all that. It has to be what is realistic. I think that is
two things. One is you need to work smart,
yes.
Not just work hard.
Yes.
And you need to say no, enough is enough.
Yes.
You need to realize that you are what you are thanks to your family.
Yes.
They are not something to be attended in a pastime.
Yes.
It is not something which is a weekend activity.
Absolutely.
It's a part of your culture, you're part of your life.
Now, what are your main hobbies and other new habits and practices which have now become non-negotiable? To some extent, you have covered, I think, your thoughts on work-life balance and how generationally it has changed. But can you talk something about what are your other hobbies outside of your work?
You use the word non-negotiable. Yes. And I said that I would say that health and mental wellness are absolutely non-negotiable.
Yes.
In fact, I believe that if you are a leader over a sustained period of time, the only way you can ever do that is if you are physically and mentally alert and fit all the time. I do have a vast number of hobbies, Zubin, and I won't take a lot of time talking about it. There's a book out there, which is a book which I have authored, which is a compendium of articles on half Anna lithograph stamps. So I am an avid philatelist. I exhibit my stamp collection. I do that in India, overseas. I have won a number of medals. In fact, I have a very prestigious exhibition coming up in Boston in 2026, where I'm going to exhibit archival collection of India. I have huge interest in paintings, and I have a decent art collection. I collect old first edition of books, and I have a good collection. I like to read a lot, and I have a good collection of books. If you would have come to my office, Zubin, I like historical documents. In fact, I'm in the process of preparing a collection of very old documents and gifting them to the Bombay High Court for display in their museum. So I enjoy history, I enjoy literature, I enjoy music, and I enjoy a lot of. I think music is the biggest catharsis that
Yes,
one can have,
yes.
and I enjoy a lot of it. So I spend a lot of
Music
time on my
really has
hobbies.
a lot of benefits, health benefits, wellness benefits,
Oh,
I think, yes.
absolutely,
And you are
absolutely.
really a multifaceted personality,
I
I
don't
must
know
say.
about that, but I
But
believe
lot
that
of definitely hobbies, I think, which are very enriching, I'm sure mentally stimulate you quite well.
at least it keeps me sane,
Say,
because
yes,
if I
yes,
spend such a lot of time
yes.
only on
On
my
advisory,
profession,
yes,
then I would go crazy.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, what are some of the key learnings which would be relevant to the current generation and also to the aspiring professionals in the future over the next 5, 10, or 20 years?
If I sit back and reflect on my own life, I grew at a time, and then I'm sure Zubin, so did you,
Yes,
uh, where growth was something which happened over a period of time. You are always asked to wait, your time will come. It takes so many years to become a partner, it
yes,
so and so, whatever. Those definitions have changed. The profession has undergone a change. Technology has undergone a change. Also, the number of opportunities available today are vastly different from what they
absolutely.
were. A professional today can do 20 different things which, when you and I
Maybe
qualified,
little less
was
than 5.
did not even
Yes,
exist. Correct. um, I think if I had to talk to people of today, I would say that as chartered accountants, we have been trained to be conservative. Get out of that conservatism. Your biggest thing which holds you back is fear, is anxiety. Learn to challenge. In fact, I spoke to you about Bombay Chartered Accountant Society, and I might just take a minute to talk to you. One of the things which Bombay Chartered Accountant Society taught me is that you can think outside the framework of a boss. You can engage intellectually, honestly. There are no levels there. When you're sitting with people, a person may be the most senior person and you may be the most junior.
junior person,
What
absolutely.
matters is what ideas are brought to the table. And that profession is bigger than any firm. Those are the principles which I would like to leave with the youth of today. Learn to say no. Do not try and fit yourself into grooves. There is a lot of life beyond that. Learn to question. Be intellectually always honest, and intellectually always aspiring to do more and more and more.
Absolutely. I'm sure, I think the youth, our young viewers would have, I think, assimilated all this and hope they practice all these things, because that is how not only the profession will grow, but also our country will also prosper.
You spoke about our country prospering. um, I was with the Prime Minister a couple of days ago as a part of a delegation which interacted with him. And he made a comment which was so relevant and which is so contextual in my own context. And he mentioned that the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge which he sees is that the aspirations of Indians is growing. Everybody wants to fly, everybody wants to have a car, everybody wants to have overseas vacation, everybody wants to start their own business, do whatever things. And he says that's the biggest opportunity, because that's the way country can grow.
Grow.
And that's the biggest challenge which,
Challenge.
if he as a leader does not fulfill,
Fulfill.
he would have let the country down. And I
Yes.
go back and I look at Dhruv and I come back to the same thing, that I have such a lot of youth in my organization. They are very, very aspirational. They are not tied down by their ability to speak just because they are young and whatever else. And am I in a position to provide opportunities to them on an ongoing
In fact,
basis?
this is something like more of reverse mentoring also is now relevant rather than
Oh,
mentoring. I
absolutely.
mean, the young ones have to
Absolutely.
mentor us
Absolutely.
also, and we
Absolutely.
should not be ashamed. Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, coming back to women professionals, see, personally for BCAS, now Nari Shakti is one of our initiatives for the current year. So, what would the advice which you would give to women professionals who wish to transition into what I would call not only the second innings of their career, but maybe for them the second innings is probably post maybe family, motherhood, and all that. So, what advice would you provide to such women
I would
professionals?
first begin to say that don't hold back your aspirations. Don't be apologetic just because you have some other priorities, your family, whatever else, does not mean that you are sacrificing career at the altar of that. Okay? Both can run parallelly. I have seen, for example, we as an organization have women folk employed through the length and breadth of the country, people who took a break, went down to whether it was maternity leave, came back, children, whatever, now want to come back, are very good, still don't want to do work from office on a regular basis, but are very good at their job. And we come back to say, you are absolutely welcome to work from home. You are absolutely, so long as we agree as to what you will do, and they contribute enormously.
Yes.
So the message that I would leave for women folk is, don't be apologetic about your other priorities. They are equally important. They are more important. They contribute as much as they can. And keep updated. Keep learning. Just because you are on a break, do not walk away. In fact, in our organization, we come back and say that whenever somebody is on a maternity leave or an extended maternity leave or for any other thing, we go on updating them technically. And when they come back, they are absolutely ready to take it forward.
Now, coming to what next? Are any other new chapters planned in your second innings? Or, if I may say so, is there scope for a third innings also? Is the conclusion. Yes.
Zubin, I can't do crystal ball gazing, but the way I would look at it is slightly different. There are people who come and ask me saying, Dinesh, you are 67 and you still keep going, you work hard, or so they believe. I don't. And I go back and say that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Yes.
It is not work for me, and that is not a euphemism. That's a reality. I enjoy the work that I'm doing. I cannot function in an environment where I have to do a task which I'm not enjoying. It doesn't work with me at all. I have huge amount of curiosity. When I look at AI, and we have taken steps to implement AI in our organization, and therefore I think, to my mind, so long as I continue to be curious, I will continue to keep on evolving. In fact, in the very, very recent past, Zubin, I can tell you, one of the, not one of the world's largest independent tax firm based out of USA took equity in our organization, and we invested back into them. And I have now grown on to become vice chairman. The name of the firm is Ryan. And it just excites me that I can now contribute to the development of tax, not only at an Indian level, not only at a Middle East and Far East where we are there, but at a global level. The world of tax is changing.
Right.
The number of things which OECD has done in the recent past, technology and what AI can do, and how it can make so many tasks mundane and sort of research, the speed with which one can do things, it's just amazing. And it just keeps me going to say, so to your question, I would say, so long as curiosity is there around,
Absolutely.
I'll be keeping on doing new
Very good.
things.
And AI definitely will definitely help us. It has to be used judiciously. Definitely. So I think, thank you very much, I think, for giving good insights. Now, just some rapid fire questions. One skill every finance professional should build today.
It's being holistic. People view, again, whether it is tax, whether it is finance, we become very siloed. We need to be holistic in our approach and go beyond whatever we are doing.
One skill which they should unlearn.
Uh, that is fear.
Okay.
Because we are conservative chartered accountants, fear is something which we should
A
share.
book which has significantly influenced your thinking.
The one book which has very significantly influenced me is Justice by Michael Sandels. It teaches you that how do you make judgments? How do you work? How do you make judgments under ambiguity? That's the biggest need for any leader. Uh, what is right and what is not right? How does one encompass legal with moral? a very interesting book.
A leader who inspires you.
I've been personally, Zubin, very fortunate to work with Mr. Ratan Tata. God bless his soul. I worked with him. He has been a client. He has been somebody with whom I did number of assignments. Worked very very closely with him, and I can tell you that for a person to work with him is so much inspiring and so much learning. A lot of institutional thinking, a lot of being calm under pressure, not getting ruffled, thinking far beyond. I worked with him almost at a point of time when he had just come out of Nelco, taken charge, and everybody was skeptical as to whether he could rejuvenate the whole Tata group, and he did. It was a wonderful experience.
A daily habit that grounds you.
Ah, I would say think, reflect before you respond. Don't shoot.
And a final advice to your younger self in one sentence, if you were to be different.
Learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Relearn.
That's a mantra which all of us should follow.
Thank you, Mr. Kanabar, for a very interesting discussion on the topic of second innings. You have given a lot of insights and a lot of food for thought for the younger generation, especially. It is like a buffet spread in any 5-star or 7-star hotel. And I'm sure a lot of things can be chosen from that buffet and devoured by the professionals over the part of their career. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you once again, Zubin, and grateful for having me here. I hope that was useful. Thank you.